go. Awesome. I just want to call you. I've got so many, after that conversation around LinkedIn, so many nicknames we could go through. So I've got Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men, which was the first one that stuck out.
Yeah, that's not the one
No, it's not the one. The one we agreed on was Bill and Ted, because we are going to go on some excellent adventures today, aren't we, gents?
Yes, we are.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, gents. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on and speaking to me at the International Classroom Podcast. For those of people who aren't on LinkedIn and aren't aware of you in a Swindon capacity, now we're going further afield. Just give us a brief synopsis of sort of what you two do and sort of how you met.
Okay, brief. That'll be challenging. I'll try and do that. So I'm Ben Edmonds. I've spent the last 12 and a half years at Dyson in new product innovation. And a few years ago, I accidentally started an international kids club teaching kids innovation and problem solving after I took my own kids out of mainstream education. Don't shoot me. Because what I saw was it wasn't really fit for the future. And I put a post on Facebook about some stuff I was going to do. And about 300 families were like, this is wicked. Where do we sign up? I'm like, that is not the plan. If it was the plan. And so I just was like, well, look, I can't be everywhere. And obviously DT has to be in person, which we found out later wasn't the case. But so I was like, look, who's around, who wants to come and hang out? And so I stripped all the furniture out of my living room every Thursday and just allowed some kids to come in and work with me. And really, really long story short, that kind of got really carried away. I quite liked it. The kids quite liked it. And eventually I moved out of my living room because we outgrew it. And I moved into this place called the UTC in Swindon. There's a number of these university technical colleges across the UK. And so then I was posting more stuff online about what I was up to. And then Aaron got in touch with me.
Yeah, so I think we are the first people to ever use Facebook for what it was actually intended for, which was to meet people. So I'm Aaron and I am co-founder of Inventor Club as well. I didn't start the initial kids club, but what I did see was one of Ben's Facebook adverts for the club. And it was just modelling, it was cardboard. And I thought, that looks pretty cool. And I literally, just being a cheap teacher, thought I'd pop down, go for a session and get some free CPD, because it did say in there, engineer. And I thought, yeah, I'll see what it's about. And I loved it. I loved the club. I loved the feel. I loved the just the freeness of it. And I just come along for another week and I said, oh, I'm willing to come help out, actually. This is quite cool. It's quite a cool club. And then we got talking and then we realised actually we wanted to start a company. And we then got talking about our views on education. Like I said, Ben from the home education side. Me, I am a teacher. I'm a lead practitioner, digital leader. I've done training, CPDs, and actually everything we were talking about, we were just really aligned. And we were able to then have this freedom with the club to do whatever we wanted and lead it in the way that we thought would be best. And then other teachers started agreeing. And so we then just carried on going, doing inset days, doing training. And from there, we've just span it into a company.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to use a term that we can laugh at now, can't we, Ben? But you guys come and parachute into schools. Is the term that we've laughed about, as someone said, which is a fast forwarding to today. That's what you guys are doing a lot of. So, what is it? You're going into primary, secondary schools, through schools. What does then a typical sort of PD or creative session from the Inventor Club look like?
Yeah. So I'll take you back to my brief intro, which there was a little bit that I missed out, which is the nugget of magic that we've now rolled into everything. So. Just really, I will try and be brief because I'm rubbish at being brief. But basically, the way I started the kids club was that I was like, everybody needs to make a cool thing. Let's make a cool thing. So I made a cool thing. I made this hydraulic bridge, and I was like, all the kids are going to make the same cool hydraulic bridge. And then basically, for 6 weeks, I herded children through instructions, and it was awful. Like, they didn't love it. I definitely didn't love it. And the magic moment came when Work had been mental. There was a knock at the door. I'm like, I wonder who that is. I open the door. There's the kids. Oh, no, I've definitely planned this. In you come. And then I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And all I did was I just put a problem on the board. I put a problem board. I put 7 lines. I put a box and a step. And I said, how do we get the box up the step? And over about 45 minutes, those 7 to 12-year-olds, they started doing the obvious thing, which is, how do you do this, Ben? And I'm like, every question you're going to ask me, I'm going to turn it back to you, and you need to work it out together. And what happened, it was just amazing. I just gradually faded into the background and they collectively worked it out together. And that was amazing. We start with a problem. We give them a little bit of skill where they need it. We give them the materials and things which are really rudimentary, as low level, as low cost as possible, like borderline rubbish, but allow their creativity to totally flourish. And that's exactly what we do with all of our sessions. We start with a problem. We give them rubbish but in pretty boxes, and then we then let them go at it, right? Rather than saying prescriptively, we're all going to make the same thing, or we're going to do like block bots, or we're going to drill holes through something, or we're going to line bend the same mobile phone holder. Here's the instructions. Don't use your brain. Don't think. Everything we do is actually about mindset. It's entirely about mindset. It's just done through the lens of DT.
Amazing. So that for you, Aaron, then obviously you're still in the school, you're still doing PD. Like, when you take this into other schools, what does that look like for you? How do you then bring that type of creativity and put it across to teachers to add value?
So everything we do is about giving permission to fail, and that's to both staff and to students. Is what we do at the club is we create this very safe environment like you do in school, and it's somewhere where people feel free to explore and that it's okay to get things wrong. And that's the first thing we get across to staff is, one, they need to feel that environment, because again, if you look online in the newspapers and everything else, it feels everything is just so high stakes all the time. And something we're doing particularly with international schools, with private schools, we're doing that with parents as well. And we're getting that mindset across that it's okay to fail as long as you're resilient to succeed, because that's just part of the process. So again, we use DT as a vehicle for that, particularly with design thinking, because there's no such thing as failure in that design process. It's called iteration. You keep on going and going through that cycle. And once you get that through people's heads, then we start to go on to actually what can you then do and how can you impart that with your children. So we do some really simple sessions just about literally, and this is the problem, moving a ball, a plastic ball that we've just printed is about that big, and you get it from over there to over there in as many ways as possible. And it's not one way, it's as many ways as possible. And within that, there's so much learning we take away every single time. And every single time it's different, depending on whether it's staff, whether it's students. We find that actually it's the student workshops. They come up with new ideas we haven't had before. And all we give them is lollipop sticks, cardboard and dowels. So it's not complicated, expensive equipment, and they're not making dovetail joints, and they're not spending hours sanding. They're actually getting really to the crux of it. We've taken away as many barriers as we possibly can to give them a chance to experiment and to fail and to then try again and experiment and test that. And that's what's been really successful. And people are craving it. They're literally craving it. And it comes from just that security of knowing, oh, actually, it's all right if I don't get it right this time.
And all of that actually stems from my career. So my job at Dyson, in the early stage, new product innovation, the early prototypes you're working on, they're not pretty. They don't look nice at all. They are literally covered in blood, actual sweat and tears. But they're made, they would ship in cardboard by the pallet load. And all of the early stage prototypes were made from cardboard, bits of old products. We used to have this graveyard of places that we would go and like rip off bits and glue it all together. It's like you would have like a whole team working on what does it look like. And then the rest of us are working on how does it actually function? What does it actually do? And what's the quickest way I can get to the solution or solutions today? And so that's the essence we've taken out of industry and we're taking into the schools. And it's that mindset, like failure is fine because there is no innovation without failure. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And if we're getting everything right every single time in innovation, like there's not going to be anything new. So we need to have that failure and we need to break that environment. It was really interesting yesterday. I was at a university I was talking to them, they were telling me about their students and the way they think and what they do. And these students are getting the best of the best grades. Like, they have to get the best to get into that university. And yet they come in, because they have been down that road of getting the best, their mindset is entirely about getting the A, getting it perfect, getting it right. And when they go, cool, so here's an open-ended challenge, guys, they're like, well, where do we start? And they're like, well, where do you think you should start? Well, I don't know. Well, what are the instructions? There are no instructions, and we are breeding, that whole education system is breeding all these people who just don't know how to think. They don't know how to solve problems, and the real world doesn't come with any instructions. And I'm quite worried about it, genuinely. So that's what we're trying to do, something about that. Get kids to be able to think for themselves, fix stuff with whatever they've got around them, and solve problems in as many different ways as possible.
Yeah, what you just said, I think it's in his book. Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Outliers. And there was a section in there that talked about the Nobel Prizes for chemistry. And it was in America. And you would go, well, you would assume that the Nobel Prize winners for chemistry would all come from the main universities, wouldn't you? The Yales, the Harvards, MITs, those real top-end Ivy League schools. And they said when they dived into the actual results of where these winners, the last 25 winners, had come from. So it was all from, I think it was like 20 or 21 different universities. And he said because it wasn't just about what we classify as convergent thinking, what is a traditional IQ test, science, math, English, those types of things. So it was more about divergent thinking. Like, what could you do? And this is always a good one. And I may have got the book completely wrong, so please don't shoot me for this. But it was like, give someone, like these types of people, like you said, here's a brick, here's a blanket. What could you do with it? And these kids that had divergent thinking skills were like, I could, traditionally use it as a rug. I could wrap the brick in the blanket, use it as a weapon. I could use it to break into a store to get resources. I could make a hammock somewhere if I did this. Whereas the convergent thinking kids were like, it's a blanket, I could lie on it. It's a brick, I can build with it. And that was it. So this was years ago. This study was done years ago. And so it still resonates today. And what you're probably highlighting there are some of the flaws with our current education system, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's
a long protracted entrance exam for universities.
And there's lots of research that shows that about creativity being fostered and allowing play and letting children explore at a younger age, and then it kind of gets drummed out of them through life, through school as they go on. And basically we're trying to get rid of that. One thing we hate hearing, and it's always from adults, is there's a fear of showing off. I can't draw, I can't do that, I'm not very creative, all the time, instantly, before we've even started. And we see that now more and more, getting younger and younger, those same phrases coming out. I'm not very good. I don't know. I've never done that before. And there's fear of failure already. Like no one's laughed. No one's brought up that it's going to fail or anything like that. And like I said, it's something we give. So again, we start all of our sessions with the club with a problem. And every time they come back with, what about a force field? What about that it flies and we're going to add spikes and we're going to do this and it's going to fly from the At no point have we ever turned around and gone, oh, no, that's not possible, is it? We can't do it. Because, again, it's possible up there because they've got the creativity to then get there. We have one kid who's his answer is always explosion. Always. Just always. There's some kind of explosion included within that solution to whatever the problem is. And we laugh. But again, we give the example of, but that's how they all got there, was in a car, was internal combustion.
Yeah, don't worry. Every episode we do, we always get an interruption from a little visitor. Her sister's just going out, and I think she got to the door first and maybe got a bit of a...
She punched me.
She what's you?
She punched me.
She punched her.
On the back.
My eldest daughter was just walking out, and her response was, it was on the back. All right, I'll see you later. Not even a sorry, admitted, it was fine. All right, darling, you'll be okay. We can get some ice cream later. Okay, right, you let me say goodbye.
Just a flesh wound.
Just a flesh wound. Bless her. But going back to what you're saying, like the combustion engine and these ideas, isn't it? It's us as adults that put limitations and almost they're not even glass ceilings now, are they? We put ceilings on. There was an interesting thing the other day posted about setting. I think someone put some on LinkedIn about the issues to do with setting kids and the impact that can have on morale and mindset and all these different things about, I can't do this. So I love the fact we've kind of gone into that idea of growth mindset and mindset for this. So you mentioned then this idea of drawing, and I'd be want to go, look, I don't mind, I'll have a go at it, I'm not the greatest, and that would be my response. But what are you guys, because I've seen this, so I'm hoping I know what the answer is going to be, because we were very lucky to cross paths in Bucharest, weren't we? What are you doing to overcome that? How are you bringing in like the current technological crazes and things to help overcome these things and further push this ideation process?
We've got a couple of different ways that we're looking at it, actually. I mean, so I know what you're alluding to, and we will get there. But typically, and Aaron has revolutionised my entire world with micro whiteboards, tiny whiteboards. I've got whiteboards everywhere. I've got a whiteboard there. I've got 6 in my workshop, and they're all massive. I love a massive whiteboard. And for the longest time, we've been giving kids a bit of paper or getting them to get their sketchbook or whatever. And then he rocks up one day. He goes, "Look what I've got." He's got 36 micro whiteboards and pens. It was amazing. And what was amazing with that, because obviously, we're talking about innovation, we're talking about technology, all that stuff. Great. We love technology, but sometimes it's the simplest things that are the best. And the beauty of that whiteboard is the ability to rub it off, right? If they don't like it, they can rub it off and start again. And what we always talk about in terms of the sketching is that this is not art class. We are not drawing the perfect apple. We are not drawing a vase of flowers like Van Gogh, right? We are actually just communicating ideas. And what I will always do is, if I'm there, I will show them my sketchbook. My sketchbook is full of nonsense, absolute nonsense. And my leveler for everybody is hands up here who's played Pictionary. And what is scary is the number of kids that is reducing over the years. I asked that question. I went to a school the other day. I asked 50 children who here has played Pictionary. One hand went up. And I think that's a real travesty, because the benefit of being able to communicate your idea to somebody, not just in words, because words are amazing and they're deeply powerful, but words mean different things to different people and their interpretation is different. And when you're reading a book, when you're reading a book and you start to imagine the characters in your head, and you're imagining them and you're picturing them and all that kind of stuff. It's like when you listen to the radio and then one day you finally see that radio presenter and you're like, they look weird. They don't look like that in my head, right? But the ability to go from words to pictures is great, and to break down that barrier of it doesn't need to be good. It's just scribbles nonsense as quick as possible. But Aaron's been bringing some other wicked stuff recently. Aaron, you can tell them all about it.
Yeah, so on the flip side of that, we've been doing a lot with AI and ideation that way with image generators. But it's really funny that Ben instantly goes to the whiteboards and stuff, because basically we this year we are tech nerds, like hugely. Love AI, we love CAD, we love CAM, we love 3D printing, laser cutting. We do all of that, but it all starts from pen and paper and from whiteboards and drawing and sketching ideas. And where we found was that a lot of people were getting in the way of themselves by going, "Oh, it's cheating. I'm not going to use AI. I don't think I should," and so on. And actually, we were finding the process of people were getting scared, particularly graphic designers, of, "This is going to get rid of my job. It's going to replace me. It's going to be doing these amazing renders and all these finished articles," because they were thinking about using AI at the end of the process. Whereas actually what we've done is we've flipped it and use it at the start. Use it for inspiration. Use it to get some ideas, to build your mood boards, to get ideas you wouldn't have thought of different styles, different artists, different functions and forms and all of that. So again, particularly, so I teach DT in school, and everything the kids want to make is a box. It's always square and it's always easy to make, because that's what they're able to draw and make. And then if you can give them that inspiration of form and flow and different shapes and different styles all combined, it can be hard to picture that in your head. But with an image generator, you can make it in seconds. You can see it right there in front of you. And so that's what we've done, is we've tried to infuse AI at every stage along that design thinking process, all the way from research. Again, it's so hard to empathize with people. Adults struggle, kids especially struggle. There's, again, lots of studies on it of how they can only see it at a certain point from their own vantage point, their own viewpoint. If you haven't seen it, there's the Smarties experiment. So they gave children a tube of Smarties, and they asked them, they said, "What do you think's in the tube?" And they would say, "Well, Smarties." And they would open it up, and actually it was a crayon in there. And the kids were shocked. "Oh." And so they put the crayon back in, and they said, "If you give this to Jimmy, what do you think Jimmy will think is in there?" And they would go, "Well, a crayon." Because they don't understand that Jimmy doesn't know. Jimmy doesn't know that the crayon's in there. And so they can't empathize that way. You ask an AI bot to think of it from a different perspective, it will give you that response from the training data that it has. And it's so eye-opening to then do that. I've done it from the point of, and I literally asked it to give me what does the hiring process feel like from the point of view of a woman? And it gave some quite good insights as to what to consider. And the first thing it said was, what do you think? Actually, I'll ask you, what do you think of the first thing it offered for interview tips and stuff for a woman?
I imagine about what she wears.
Bingo, exactly what she wears. And it was the first thing that came up. And I hadn't considered it. I thought maybe to think about pay, maybe to think about so on. But again, it was, and there was tips on what to wear and so on. And so again, that holds up all sorts about bias and so on. And this is why we've got to be really careful in how we use that with our students, and that actually it's important. It's not that we step away from it. We need to step in and start training. We can't let it be like a new social media where we fall behind as the adults and let them figure it out as they go along, and let the tech companies try and do it for us. As educators, we've got to move forward and keep up with it, because it's going to be so powerful in how we can use it for good, but we just need to train and get everyone on the same page with it.
Yeah, agreed with that. I'm just going to hark back to something just in case anyone listening. A micro whiteboard, I'm pretty sure is the same as a mini whiteboard, just in case.
It is, yeah, and thank God for YPO as well. So that's what
this big, they're incredible. Just tiny pens. Tiny pens. They just go in your top pocket if you've got one.
I've just never heard it referred to as that before. I'm sure there's going to be people out there go, yeah, it's a micro whiteboard. What are you talking about? But we'll blame Aaron. Aaron has obviously told you that's what it's called in the teaching world, and he's led you down the wrong path to make you look foolish.
At some point, someone's going to burn me to the ground with that one. You idiots. You idiot.
I joke. So what's been the, obviously going into all these schools, you go international now, what's been the feedback from teachers for this then? Because obviously you've got a combination of what I'm going to call traditional and a combination of what we're going to call futuristic, or the what is now, but basically really pushing these boundaries. What's been their take? What's been the feedback you've got from those guys?
They love it. They love it. What they love the most I'm not a teacher, so I am just going to parachute in here and give me my impression from the outside world looking in. And the feedback that I get back from them is like, thank you for today. Right? They're like, there were no rules, there were no stipulations, we didn't have to tick any boxes today. It was just freedom. So I did a session the other day with 110 head teachers of primary schools. And it was glorious. It was just utter mayhem. So the first session, I always do a bit of chat. There's always a bit of chat, a bit of context, a bit of like why we think what we're thinking, why we're going to do what we're going to do. It's definitely not death by PowerPoint. It's quite animated and whatnot. And then there's the workshop afterwards. If I can ever get the workshop in as well, that's just a magic moment. And it was 110 head teachers split into groups. They're all solving the same problem. They've all been given the same materials, and it's just laughter and it's joking and it's shouts and screams and it's making and building and creating. And they love it. And I'm going to blow my own trumpet quite heavily. 2 schools have said it's literally the best inset day they've ever done in 20 years. Which, they wrote it. I'm just saying what they said. But it's the freedom. And they're like, they said to me the other day, they're like, this is what school should be like. And it was the play bit. It was the elements. There was so many layers to it. It wasn't like we're going to do maths for 35 minutes and then we're going to do science for no, everything is everything. Everything is together. You could have picked any one of those different strands in that moment, compressed the whole thing together into 90 minutes. And then you've got the rest of the day to unpack that in as many different ways as you want to from all of that. It was just wonderful. And that's my experience of it. The teachers really love it. The kids totally come alive. And often the ones that are not thriving in that consistent situation of exams and 100%, all that kind of stuff, those quieter figures often will really flourish and really come to life because they've got this opportunity where nobody's telling them what to do and they get to be entirely creative. And it's lovely to see the teachers witness those moments and then come and tell me about them. It's great.
Yeah, because obviously there's a real emphasis here on, obviously, said the design and technology. And obviously within the UK and in other parts of the world, DT is kind of no longer on the curriculum, is it? Like it's diminishing. So, you guys are doing a great job bringing it back in. But does it all need to be face-to-face? Do I need to have you in my school in person to be able to achieve these things?
No, not at all. DT's having like an identity crisis at the moment, particularly in the UK. Is it that old school finger joints, building tables, woodwork, metalwork? Is it something a bit more modern? Is it entirely online, CAD, CAM, computer and automated design, particularly with the rise of AI at the moment? But it doesn't have to be. It's always been, Britain and the UK was built on men in their sheds making stuff, and women. But it was that innovation of working on their own, coming together in small spaces, in tools, and that's not changed. It's just now it can be online as well. And it's just about proving that method of going prototype to idea to making to then sharing that idea, and we can do that online. So with CAD CAM you can put that model together without making it necessarily, to get ideas, to share it amongst others so they can see the concept, and then you can go to a physical space and bring that alive. And that's what we're all about. It's about the digital enhancing the physical, and it's just making that process as easy as possible by choosing the right tool at the right time. So we don't use any digital tools in our club in Swindon. So that is 90 minutes of just pure making and testing and trying and just sticking stuff together. And if it works out, then fantastic. If it doesn't, we've learned something and we go back again. We've just finished this term making automatic paper aeroplane launchers, because it's just about using, they love it. And because it's about putting some electronics together with the cardboard and moving parts and mechanisms and all of that stuff that was in the curriculum, but just taught in a very different way. And that's what we're aiming for. If we can get DT to a place where that term, unit, whatever it is you're working on, you should have 30 different things, not 30 of the same thing. And that's where you know something's broken. And that's where it needs to become more explorative. It needs to become more playful and problem and solution based rather than outcome based. And I think that's where the online stuff can really help, is everyone just needs to communicate and actually come together and figure out what that identity is and how you can push forward. So something we're working on is challenge packs. It's postable boxes, and it's every single time there is just a challenge, a problem, and in there is a core mechanic of the learning. That's where all the education comes from. That's where the main part of the problem can be solved. And then everything else around that mechanic is purely up to you and creative. And we can pretty much post that across the world. And so that's our problem that we're trying to figure out, is how we scale and how we can get that message across, but without us having to be there. And that's the hard part.
In the pandemic, until that point, my club had always been in person. But because a bunch of the different things I've done, like work and all sorts of other life, I've got a lot of friends in other countries, and a number of times they could see what I was doing. I'm posting videos, and they're like, "I would love to get stuck in. This would be so good." But obviously, you're so far away; it's not going to happen. And then the pandemic happened, and at that point, it was like, for a lot of businesses, a lot of people that didn't have that divergent thinking, it was a full stop. Like, well, this is the way I've always done it, and now I can't do it, so I've got to stop. And it was at that moment that it finally pushed me. Often that is the case. It was the final push that made me do the thing I need to do, which was to figure out, how do I take this online? And actually, it was possible. And the thing with innovation, the thing with iteration, the thing with product development, often the early stages look terribly messy. They look disastrous, and it's just carnage everywhere. And in all honesty, the first few times I took my kids club online, that's what it was. I put some stuff together, had a bit of an idea, we tried it. Some kids were like, what are we doing? I don't understand this. You're in a box. Other parents are like, they're not doing this anymore. Laptop closed. But others were like, they stuck with it. And over a period of about 6 weeks, I iterated the process with the parents, with the students. I was like, what's working, what's not working, what should we keep, what should we change? And over a 6-week period, we got to a point where, like, do you know what? This can work. And then I've, fast forward over the pandemic, I then I did a session with 150 cheerleading families. My kids used to do cheerleading. So we did their entire cheerleading organisation, 150 families, simultaneously across the country, innovating, making, building, creating. It was amazing. I then did the same thing with a bunch of families who were on lockdown in Hong Kong. And then I've ended up with students all over the country and now all over the world. I've got kids in Dubai who are making automated Pokemon card dispensing machines. But it is possible. Like, whether you believe you can or you can't, you will be right. And I believe that there was a way to do it. And because of the iterative design process of build something and try it, test it. What was good? What wasn't good? We'll keep the good stuff. We'll improve the not so good stuff. And I've iterated it over time to a point where I've got an absolute banging process for doing DT online, whether that's one-to-one with students, which I do regularly, or one-to-many. And what we want to now do is we're working with a bunch of online schools to talk to them about how we can offer that into their facility for their students who are now obviously international, which is very exciting.
Very, very exciting. So if I was to say, right, from a teacher, I'm looking at going, wow, what you described just sounds like STEAM or STEM or STREAM. Is it, or is it actually a different thing?
It is, and it falls under
that.
Again, it's when you say STEM, STEAM, STREAM, whatever people are calling it, they instantly go with the maths, the science, and what they think. What we do truly is cross-curricular, and that's what the E in there is. It's for engineering, because that's the physical thing we see. Particularly, I find it with science, you can explain these concepts that are quite hard to grasp without a demonstration, and you have to have that physical thing to demonstrate it. We can talk about gravity all we like, but until you see something fall over consistently every single time, that's what engineering is. And it's about tying those different principles together. So with the paper airplane launcher, for instance, we talk about the circuit, electricity. We're talking about friction and rubber and gripping to launch something. We're talking Newton's third law. We're talking all sorts, and it's all combined. It's not conceptual. It's not out there. It's practical. It's physical. And that's what, for us, it truly, really is about bringing those things together and actually learning through DT, design, engineering, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it STEM or whatever. But that's the true part of it. The essence is the exploring and making it real and bringing it to life and being able to physically see it and do it and not just talk about it.
People seem to like putting things in boxes, don't they? They're like, yeah, I'll call it STEM, and then it's a thing. Then I've ticked all my boxes of science, technology, engineering, and math. You're still putting them in boxes. I was trying to explain, I had an idea the other day about sort of visualizing how all of this thing could look, and where you take all your lessons, which are all currently divided up into separate subjects. And I like to imagine sort of physically and visually. So I was imagining if you took all those things and you kind of etched those words onto glass, and then you then rotated that thing through 90 degrees so you could see through every single glass block. That's what we're trying to do. It's everything all at the same time, consistently. We talk about English. So if we are doing the AI stuff, we're talking about English and English language, and we're talking about your prompt craft and the words you're using, and you need to get better at using better words. That's your English stuff. We're talking about historical characters that have changed the entire planet with their inventions, and that's history. We're talking about where does this happen? What's the context in which that occurs? That's geography. The home education stuff that I do with my own kids and that we've done for years is all about just teaching children just to have a love of learning all the time and just to be fascinated with the world and curious with the world. And it is absolutely not true that children don't like education. They don't like, learning stuff. They all love it. They just want to have the environment in which that they want to do it. I saw something wicked the other day. In fact, it came off my comedic post about long division. I won't dwell on it for too long in case anybody stabs me again. But what's lovely about those posts is that sometimes you get these other conversations that start to occur. And Andrew Wright messaged me from Australia, and he's been doing some wicked stuff with Edumetaverse. And his pandemic experience was in school. Now it's at home. What are kids doing at home? Well, they love Minecraft, and they love all this kind of like virtual VR type worlds. And so he started building his problems in his schools and his teaching in those worlds. And it's like, rather than, kids, right, put your computer games down, we're going to go and do some learning now. Like, I was in school once and I overheard a TA say this. They said, "You've had your fun, now it's time for learning." And I was like, take the dagger out of my heart. What are you saying? And so what I love with what he's doing is just like, well, let's meet the kids where they're at. They love that stuff. What if I put the education and put the stuff in there? We're not going to even call it education. It's just what they're doing, and it all exists in that world. And because digital and because all that stuff, he just gave me an opportunity for my daughter to jump into one of his worlds the other day, and it was wicked, and she absolutely loved it. And so that now immediately sparks ideas in my head of what can we now do where we take our physical and enhance it with the digital, and where you can experience some of the CAD stuff you're doing, you can then drop those into those worlds, and then you can make it in real life and experience what it really does. But it's never just the digital on its own, and it's never just the physical on its own. We always love to sort of merge everything together, and it's the same thing with all the subjects. Life is not built into those little tiny compartments, and we need to get kids to be able to think more dynamically, about all of those things together.
Yeah, I've spoken with Andrew previously as well. He let me go on to show me some of his worlds that he's been making, and it's absolutely amazing. And I think there's a cluster. So Andrew Wright, you've then got Philip Alcock, and then you've got John Thomas Kelly, all in Mexico areas in Australia, but just doing fantastic things with augmented reality and virtual reality, and then project-based learning. Really just pushing those boundaries. And I had a great conversation with John then about obviously Mexico and their what we're going to call exams. Basically, he said no, they're going to project-based learning. Like, as a country, they're shifting to project-based learning. And it was interesting. Like, obviously, for me, I'm a secondary school teacher, so I look at these things and I go, oh, that could work for my year 7, my year 8, my year 9 potentially. But once I get to year 10, once I get to year 11, once I get to 13, when at A levels and GCSEs, I can bring in interdisciplinary. I can do those things, but it's that old adage, if I get this the right way around, is it the horse leading the cart type of analogy, in terms of I'm just doing what I have to do to get my students the exam results, because I'm measured. My success as a secondary educator is measured by the exam results my students get. And not to say they can't have a great time through it and learn different things, but just to focus back on the point you made, Aaron, about like the STEAM thing. Like, I've taught STEAM, and we've got this, there's a conference coming up shortly about it. But the engineering part, which is the making part, once I get to A levels, and as a science teacher, it's like you would think we want to do all these practicals, you want to get hands on. Just can't. No, it's like there are times. But what we're finding now is that actually the level of hands-on is decreasing, because the focus on content and exams is increasing. And it's kind of like we've got it the wrong way round. And I don't know if anything's going to change until exams change. And will exams ever change because it's a business?
Is something me and Ben talk about a lot, and that's what I always come back to, is there needs to be this joint up thinking between government, exam boards, leaders, and then teachers. And because at the moment, everyone's being forced, their hands being forced by someone or somewhere else, and it comes down to high stakes testing, all of it. And we need to start looking at how we assess and what do we want. Basically, we need to have this big conversation. And Ben Whitaker said it in Bucharest. Now more than ever, the conversation of what we teach and how we teach it is up for discussion. And I think it's absolutely what we need to be doing, because we're not making factory workers anymore. Not really. We're preparing people for a digital modern world. And I was listening to Dan Priestley recently. He says every generation has their benefit and their cheat code. So our parents, for instance, their benefit was cheap housing. That's how they got by. For us and our generation and Alpha coming through, it's easier than ever to make a company and a business and to not be locked in geographically. That's their cheat code. So we need to be preparing students and all of our kids coming through to be problem solvers, entrepreneurs, to be able to challenge themselves to go and travel and be a nomad, and manage that landscape of how their future is going to be. And school hasn't necessarily kept up with that, where we can get them to understand how they can fix these problems, how they can come and look at problems from multi-facets and come at different angles, because the answer for them has always been in the back of the book. If they wait long enough, someone will tell them what the answer is. And that's what they're used to. They're not used to having a problem and having to sit with that problem for a week, 2 weeks and longer. And they become very reliant on being spoon-fed. And that's where the exams come in, because they know I write my answer, and if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And so we need to get past that and start looking at different assessment methods of public speaking and presenting, making content and videos, podcasts. I always come back to it, and I say it in all my trainings, is when it was the pandemic, we were in lockdown, no one was screaming, "Oh, I want my maths back. Oh, where's my maths?" They wanted creative subjects. We wanted to play, we wanted to learn, we wanted to cook, we wanted to do all these creative things. That was what we craved. Yet we went back into schools and everything went back to the way it was. So I think assessment is a big thing that's going to change. And it's not an easy answer. There is no quick fix to that. But there needs to be some real joint up thinking all the way through, right from the top of policy to exam boards, leaders, schools and teachers. I know B-Dales, they've started doing something about it. They've started pushing from school level up. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that. And then we'll finally join in the middle and we'll find more of a future solution. But it's not an easy one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're the rose between two thorns here, really, Ben, in terms of you're the non-educator who for some reason has decided to take himself into education, whereas we've got teachers in droves leaving. Yeah, I mean, how do you view it? Obviously, you've moved your kids out into home education, but you're going into schools and you are speaking with teachers, you're getting hands-on. You know, we laugh and joke about you parachuting in, but the fact is you've actually probably been into a lot more schools and spoke to a lot more teachers from all over the world. You've got a pretty good sense of what's going on. Like, what's your take on it?
I consistently ask every single school just before I leave, because I've done some session. I do a session, and as I'm out the door, I'm like, just let me know, what is your biggest problem right now with your students? Like, just in general. I know the behaviour thing. I know that there's issues of behaviour, particularly in the UK. I don't know if that's the same issue for you over there, Alex. But consistently, at all the schools, fear of failure. And that's what they tell me. They're students. We are creating this environment where students are so afraid to fail. My wife coined it. She wrote it very, very nicely, and I always get it slightly wrong. But she said this. She said, if we're too afraid to fail, we become too afraid to try. And if we're too afraid to try, what are all the amazing innovations and discoveries that we're going to miss out on that could benefit society? Like, you have to just let that sit in your head for a minute. What are all the things we're going to miss out on? I went to the university, I won't name it because it's probably just unfair or whatever, but I went there yesterday and they literally said the first 2 years is having to essentially unschool them to be able to think creatively for themselves. They have only got into that university because they got the best of the best grades. A stars, A's. They're having to even raise the bar because their entrance is so hammered with people trying to get in. They're having to raise the bar, and it's a self-perpetuating environment that is leading towards obedient little robots. And guess what? The robots are already here. We've got them, and we can ask them to do all that work for us. What we need is people who can think for themselves, who are creative, free-thinking mavericks, who can genuinely solve the really big problems, the genuinely, seismic energy crisis, food crisis, people crisis. All of those big problems need big solutions. And if people are just taught to consistently think in the way they've always thought, to be able to get an A on the exam, to be able to spit the thing on there in the right way, madness, utter madness. I really genuinely hope at some point that the bubble bursts in the same way that the .com bubble burst. I really hope that education, that constant climbing towards perfection, bursts somewhere. And if it's the case, I've been thinking about this a lot. If it's the case that we still need to measure stuff, okay, then I genuinely think that one of the most important things we should have in our curriculum is that we should be measuring problem-solving capability. and I believe it is possible. At Dyson, they had this amazing team which was created a number of years ago, and I'd never seen anything like it in industry. I've been in industry for over 20 years, and they created this team. It was called the Mechanistics team. And I've tried to kind of explain back to them what I think they do a number of times, and this was generally my explanation. It's like they take thoughts and feelings and they can turn those into numbers. And when you can give numbers to engineers, they can then have them as technical levers, and they can turn things up and turn it down. They can make stuff to be able to adjust the numbers that work all the way back to feelings. And it was amazing. So what they will do is they will spend time with people, they listen to them, they understand their problems and their ideas and all that kind of stuff, and then they ask them particular questions in particular ways, and they find their feeling and thought process on that, and then they can then turn that all the way back into numbers. It's amazing. So I think genuinely there's an opportunity to do something amazing where you make some sort of qualification or some bit of some of the curriculum somewhere that is measuring people's ability to come up with multiple solutions to open-ended problems. It should not be that there is the solution, there is the way of writing it that will get you the grade. It's actually, how expansive can you be? How divergent on your thinking can you be? And we're going to reward that with a number or a letter or whatever we're using this week. I think it could be game changing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's always going to be that. And I think, obviously, without getting into the paradigm shift that could occur, is the impact on, let's say, engineers who need an element of creativity, but also need to understand the laws of physics. You've then got doctors. And so it's an interesting one, and debate probably for another time. But in terms of what do we do for those who want to go into that field where, you know what, actually they do need to regurgitate, they do need to be able to do, the science and maths. It's an interesting problem. I don't think we've got the solutions for it right away, have we? But there is definitely, as you say, a bubble burst or a paradigm shift that's going to be required to improve. I like this word. I like the word develop and improve at the moment. I said something to you the other day. I said, I've gone off this word of disrupt. I much prefer, I want to develop it, I want to improve it. Like you said, what can we save, what do we salvage, and what do we scrap? That process of, what's good for us. Tom Rogerson said it's like we're going over the bridge to the future. What do we need to take with us from the past?
Yeah. So I'm wholeheartedly in favour of that. I don't, like Aaron and I talk about this, like, do I literally just chuck a fireball and burn the whole thing down? I don't think that is the case. There is still loads of fantastic stuff in the education system, but it needs to catch up. And technology is running away at an exponential rate, and education is not getting there with your electronic whiteboards.
But it's definitely not. So let's just close this one out then for you guys. Just sort of go, Aaron, I'm going to ask you first in terms of this. Like, what is your dream for the Inventor Club looking into the future? What do you want it to accomplish?
For us, it's to we got for us it's sort of multi-fold. I want us to be able to get into schools as much as possible and to share this experience and how they can create a safe environment for failure again, and get that play going, get that problem-based and solution-based learning going. We want to then do that with parents and kits and across the world. We want to basically scale our thinking everywhere for everyone to experience. That's the issue. Now, it's very broad and it's very fluffy. And that's why we're working out about how we do that and how we do that effectively, whether that's through training, kits, or even worksheets and everything else. But we do whatever it takes for people to kind of get on board with that thinking. So what we're looking at the moment is just how we scale and get that out to the masses. And I say it selfishly with training because I don't want to leave teaching. I enjoy getting up in front of assembly halls and groups of teachers and actually talking about education and how to move it forward and so on. So selfishly, if it was me, I would just do that constantly all the time. But I can only be in so many places, and so can Ben. So we're looking at how we do that without necessarily us being there. And we've got some exciting things coming down the pipeline where hopefully we can achieve that.
We've got some big dreams. We've got some very big dreams. I'm a big dream thinker. Okay, I did this training a long time ago, and it was all about insights, and it's about helping you to understand yourself. And in that, I'm a yellow. I'm a visionary, and it was amazing to do that, to be able to fully embrace who I am. I love it. Honestly, get me in front of 10,000, 100,000 people, I will flip and come alive. And here's the thing, right? This is my dream. This is my dream. Imagine millions of young people who now know how to solve any problem that comes in front of them in as many different ways as possible, with whatever they've got around them, with whoever they've got around them, in whatever ways, who can then take their ideas and communicate those to anybody so they fully actually understand it and get it. Imagine that. Imagine 10 years further down the line. Imagine the butterfly effect of that, rather than, did you all get an A on your test? And here's how we're doing it. Okay, here's how we're doing it. That box up a step, we're turning that into this thing called Problem of the Week. So at the minute, we're making 52 of these open-ended problems, and it's going to look fantastic, because often a lot of this stuff looks just a bit crap. Okay, it's going to look fantastic, and there's going to be a load of videos and stuff behind it, which give you the ethos and the thinking behind it, and like, why are we doing this? And then we're going to give it away. We're going to give it away to the planet, and we've currently got access through a number of different people to approximately 1.5 million kids in terms of our trajectory of where we're going to send it. One person I'm working with, so I got asked the other day, have I got my own podcast? I don't, but I'm going to. We're going to start it this year. It just so happens, his uncle runs a thing called Feed the Hungry. They feed 500,000 children every single day. What if we didn't just feed their body? This is where I get emotional. What if we fed their mind? That food has to be packaged in something every single day. What if the packaging was my problems? You unfold it, there's my problem of the week, and then everything I said earlier, everything we do is made from borderline rubbish, so it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. Here's the problem. Here's how you can attack the problem. Use whatever you've got around you to solve the problem. And what if every single day they were fed both in their body and their mind? Game freaking changing.
You got just
I'm
like
going to give it away.
That's my mic drop moment for it. Amazing. I can't think of a better way to finish this episode, gents, than with that. That's absolutely amazing, and wish you all the best for those future endeavours. Those are some big dreams, but some wow worth it dreams, most definitely.
Yeah.
Very, very, very exciting. Very exciting. And it has been Mr. Alex Winter, Mr. Keanu Reeves. You can figure out which one's which, by the way. Go ahead. A most excellent adventure. Fascinating stuff, guys. Thank you ever so much for sharing that with us.
Hey, thanks for having us, mate.
Yeah, this is much better than the first version we did in Bucharest.
The shame.